Hello, everybody. Hi. Um, I'm back. It's been a long time since we've done one of these Q&As. I've spent the last month in Texas taking care of some things for my family, and I'm just really happy to be back with you guys. I have missed you guys, and I have missed digging into fun mystery writing questions. So, give me a thumbs up or a howdy in the chat if you can see me and hear me just fine. And yeah, I'm so glad to see you all. I see Sherry and Keith and Angela and John. So yeah, and Gus. So it's wonderful to see you all. And and Helen says that she can see me and hear me just fine. So we're great. And let's jump right into the questions. All right. So the first one I have is I've got it. It's from Jeremy. Okay. Jeremy asks, do you have any tips for a detective character who excels at investigation, but is otherwise somewhat dim when it comes to the rest? Okay, so I think what you have to do is decide why he excels at investigation and then why he is somewhat dim regarding other matters. So this one thing I often have people do in my simple mystery class, which we're going to talk about a little bit more later because I'm opening another round. One thing I often have them do is try to come up with a unique investigative talent for the sleuth. So one example you might think of is Monk. Monk has the unique ability to zero in on the physical clues around the scene, and that's related to his obsessive compulsive disorder and just his need to focus on minutiae. And so that is a kind of unique thing, and we all kind of love to watch the Monk moment where he's framing the scene with his hands and trying to get to those little details. And I feel like it's a fun thing to build in for your character, build in that kind of Monk moment where whatever his talent is, we can anticipate him using it, and we can we can take joy in those scenes and seeing what he really has to offer. And I think these talents usually wind up giving your sleuth one of three things. First, he can have a bank of knowledge. He could have legal knowledge, medical knowledge. He could have, knowledge about banking or any particular subject that's going to be helpful in his cases. He could have a skill. He could be great at disguising himself, or he could be a athlete or a gymnast who can kind of sneak into buildings. He can grapple up the gutter or whatever and sneak in. Or he can have a skill that gives him access. He can be a journalist who has the ability to call up a lot of sources and get people talking to him. He can just have a manner of interacting with people that gives him greater access to their thoughts. Another unique investigative talent would be in the show Lucifer. Lucifer had the ability to make people tell him what they truly desire. So that's a access talent. It gives him access to information that the other sleuths don't have. The other characters don't have. And it's always kind of a fun moment to see him pull out that unique investigative talent. And then, you mentioned wanting to create a detective who's great at investigation, but is somewhat dim. So I think you want to answer that question too. Why are they dim? Is there a particular aspect of human interaction that they just kind of can't clue in on? Are they overly focused on one thing or another? A character who I can think of who really fits this bill is the character from Nita Prose's book, The Maid. So the protagonist in this book is strongly autistic, but she's good at well, she's good at figuring things out. But we can see situations where we can understand the emotional context of what people are saying. And yet we can also see that it is going over the protagonist's head. She has a particular kind of blind spot to just the subtleties of human speech and intention as expressed in their in their voice and mannerisms. And so that can be kind of interesting. So I think that that's a really fun problem to solve, is to come up with a sleuth who really can deliver the goods in terms of investigation, but has their own particular problems. And I don't know, I think that's kind of like, that's the best kind of sleuth, where we can see that they have their own their personal challenges, as do we all. And yet they've got something to give. So good luck with that, Jeremy. And I'm going to move on to the next question. Oh, and if you have a question for me, can you please type in all caps question : and then your question, and then that will help me scan through the comments and try and find people who are looking for help. All right, so this one was from, I think it's from, Death Dares. He says, I need a new idea for the first novel in my series. I want to write my own modern day murder mystery series. Awesome. Any ideas? Yes, I do have ideas. But they are mine. And you are going to need your ideas, because of course my ideas are the kind of ideas that appeal to me. I can see myself living inside that book as I'm writing it, and I can see myself being interested in ferreting out all of the emotional angles and all of the all the little minutiae that would have to do with this particular world I'm trying to explore, or this particular twist in a mystery. So, but here are my suggestions for how to come up with an idea that is going to give you that same feeling that you just can't wait to write it. And that's to begin by creating your hook. And the way I like to define a hook is it's the world the cozy inhabits. So, or the world your mystery inhabits. I know not everyone's writing a cozy, but so the hook of Elizabeth Peters is early 20th century Egypt. The or Elizabeth Peters' Amelia Peabody series, at any rate. The hook of Monk is kind of the world of his obsessive compulsive disorder. The hook of Columbo is, I guess I'd say it's police investigation, but it's also the particular kind of questioning he deploys, which is in fact his unique investigative talent, is the way he questions people and just slowly sort of politely gets to the small disruptions in their story that allow him to blow the case wide open. So I would say the way to find a hook that's really going to shine for you, that's really going to give you that great feeling that you want to write about it, is start by making a list of the worlds that you know. So, some worlds that I know are the world of motherhood, the world of Texas, the world of Catholic high school, the world of video game design. And so I could put those on a list, and then I could also make a list of the worlds I am passionate about. I am passionate about World War II. I am passionate actually about a lot of periods of history. I'm passionate about Christianity. I'm passionate about dragons. And so I can look at these lists of the worlds I know and the worlds I'm passionate about, and then I can kind of just circle the ones that mean the most to me, that I can most imagine myself writing a mystery in. And then, just from there, I can start to think of, well, what are the kinds of people who might exist in this world? What are the kinds of events that might occur, the kind of settings that might form the backdrop of a great scene. And once I'm starting to put together those lists, I'm starting to generally I have the feeling. I have the feeling of which of these projects that I want to pursue. I have the idea of which one is just kind of a match made in heaven for me. So that's where I would start, is just a simple list. Doesn't have to take more than 20 minutes to put together, but just the worlds you know and the worlds you love, and then try to put together a list of the things that would go within those worlds. And from there, you're just going to come up with a mystery that would work well in one of those worlds. And where you might start there actually is your list of people. You've got your list of people who belong in the world of vampires. So you've got, your vampire queen and your novice vampire and your vampire hunter. Imagine those characters. Imagine one of them who you'd like to be the victim, and then imagine a reason that somebody reasonably might kill that character. They might kill them out of a need for money, out of fear, out of love. Perhaps they want to be with this character's partner, or perhaps they feel that this character is a threat to their current relationship. Money, fear, love, and power. They might kill the character out of power. So once you have those 2 points, the victim and the motive, often the third point, who the villain actually is going to be kind of clear to you. So that's where I would start. Come up with a good world, then come up with a good victim and villain that belong in that world, and a motive linking them together. All right, I am going to scan through my comments because I see you guys have been busy typing. Yes says, I would love for someone to write a historical cozy set in Japan. That would be amazing. I would love that. Okay. Question. You covered the topic of frenemies in one of your videos. What are some interesting character relationship types? Shoot. I mean, off the top of my head, frenemies are obviously really, really fun. I think that was a super early video I did talking about Odo and Quark from Deep Space Nine, and how I just love how they kind of, are always kind of getting one up on the other, and yet sometimes their interests are aligned and they have to work together. Obviously, there are certain romances that are really fun, like the enemies to lovers romance, or love at first sight. Sidekick relationships can be really fun, especially if the characters are a little bit frenemy, by which I don't mean that they are, I guess, more towards the friend than the enemy part of that. Their interests are probably very aligned, but they probably have some points of conflict. Perhaps they have different attitudes towards money. Perhaps they have different attitudes towards mercy or towards justice. And these different attitudes will sometimes come into play in the cases that they have to solve. And that could be a really interesting point of conflict for your sleuth and her sidekick. And let's see, Texas Nana says, can the villain do first murder in misguided attempt, has a serious insecurity or abandonment issues, to help befriend the sleuth, and later turn on the sleuth and try to kill the sleuth in the end? I mean, yeah, absolutely. You can, so this is another thing that we talk about in my simple mystery course, which is that whatever your villain's plan is, it probably does not go completely according to plan. Things go wrong. There are glitches in the plot. And when there's a glitch in the plot, your villain is going to take a new action. They're going to make a decision to commit some subsequent crime, or to cover up some evidence or create some false evidence. And this can really be kind of the meat of the second half of your plot. So yeah, absolutely. Your villain can do something at the beginning and with the intention of making friends with your sleuth, or doing something she thinks will help the sleuth, and then later turn on them. Absolutely. That's, I think, a really great twist, actually, and it would allow her to behave differently before and after she makes the decision to betray the sleuth, which could result in some really great clues. We could see great emotional clues to her changed state of mind, before she is volunteering information and she's trying to spend more time with the sleuth. And later she's doing things that just strike the sleuth as a little odd, given the way she's behaved before. And this can be one of the clues that you'll use to unravel your mystery. So I think that's a fabulous idea. I had one more question in here. What's that? All right. Ernst says, what different ways can you use to introduce an incriminating clue early on, especially ones that are difficult to hide in plain sight? Okay, so it's hard to know exactly what you mean by hard to hide in plain sight. So sometimes I think of clues that you put in plain sight as transparent clues. And these are clues that, yes, you're shown, but you never really notice them as a clue. Perhaps you see that the character is wearing a necklace with a lion on it. And this will later be revealed to be a clue to the fact that she is a Leo. She's her astrological sign is Leo. And although you saw the lion necklace, you never really saw it as a clue. So that can be a really fun way to introduce a clue, is just mix it in with a bunch of details about this character's appearance. And then later, only later, when your sleuth calls it out, will we realize that it's a clue. And then, of course, there are what I think of as translucent clues where we're sure that it's a clue, but it's been distorted. So that can be another fun way to introduce a clue early on, is to give us the clue, very clearly show us this is a clue. This is a scrap of paper in the victim's hand. This is a photograph of the victim in a particular area that's forbidden, but you distort or occlude the clue in some way. Part of the photograph is missing, or part of the message is missing, or it's been written over in some way that changes the shape of the letters. But these are really fun ways to introduce clues and to kind of get your plot going. All right, I'm going to click back over to my pre-submitted questions. All right, so Jeremy asks, do you have any suggestions for keeping things fair play with the reader without being too obvious when it comes to the whodunit aspect of a murder mystery? And then K-Boo asks, hey, Jane, how can I make discovering my story's clues more interesting than following a paper trail and reading the papers over? How can I think up active ways for my characters to uncover a mystery? Thank you and get well soon. Okay, so he wrote that when I canceled the last live stream because I was not well. So the answer to both of these is kind of going to be exactly what I just talked about, which is translucent clues. You give us the clue, so we know we have the clue. So you're playing totally fair with the reader. Fair play is when you make sure that the reader has all the information that they would need to solve the mystery if they want to. So you're playing totally fair, and we've got the clue, but you've just distorted it in some interesting way. So an example I often use is from an episode of Monk where the victim crawls to a witness and gasps out his final words, which are girls can't eat 15 pizzas, which is so obviously a clue, right? Because it's the victim's last words. He repeated them 3 times in an effort to make them memorable, but it obviously is not meaningful to the sleuth. We don't know what is intended by that. So eventually he's able to figure out that this is a mnemonic device. He finds the key to the clue, which is this victim was a businessman with a lot of contacts, and he used mnemonic devices to remember the names and family members of all his different contacts. So putting those two pieces of information together, girls can't eat 15 pizzas, and this victim used mnemonic devices, we realize that the sentence is a mnemonic device. It is actually a mnemonic device for the villain's license plate, which is GCE15P. Um, so that I think is the way to play fair and yet make it a little less obvious and also make it interesting. I also am not a big fan of the sort of paper trail mysteries where we go to the location and we get the clue and we go to the next location, we get the clue and so on. I like a little bit of puzzle. I like a clue to live with your sleuth for a while and to bother him and and for him to have to rack his brain to finally arrive at that solution. I feel that it is fun for the reader and it gives you the feeling that you're dealing with a really smart sleuth who is able to find the solutions to those puzzles. All right, so my next question is from Starla. Would changing the point of view for each book in a series be frowned upon since it's not the norm? I have an idea to write a series of 4 cozies, each from a different character's point of view. All books are set in the same small town and the characters and stories all overlap. So I think it's that last sentence in your question that really is the key, which is that the characters and stories all overlap. I think when I want to read a series, when I finish a book and I loved it and I want to pick up the next one, I want to know that I'm going to have some of the same experience that I just had from reading that first book. And not just in terms of this author is talented and I enjoy the way she writes, but I want to connect with those same characters. So these are the 2 things I would do. First of all, whoever is the point of view character for your second book, I would be sure that we fall in love with her in the first book, that when we finish that book and we look on your sales page and we see what the second book is and we see, oh, it's from Jolene's point of view. Awesome. We have the feeling that is awesome. That yes, we are ready to jump into Jolene's point of view because we liked her so much in book 1 where she was not the protagonist. So that's one thing I would do. And then the second thing is I would do whatever I could in your marketing to make it clear what your series is. Your series is not a series about the protagonist of book 1. Your series is a series about the town. So I would perhaps try to title my books in a way that wraps in the name of the town. I would consider a tagline for the books that wraps in the town, the name of the town or the concept of the town. Like, maybe murders abound in name of town. Yeah, I would try as much as possible to just make this town unique, to make it, to kind of give it its own character, give its community its own attitudes and maybe its own blind spots and its own traditions, things that give us that feeling of that same feeling we have when we fall in love with a character. I think as much as possible, you want to allow people to do that for your town, which is in fact the unifying aspect of your series. All right, then this is another question about point of view. If the book is from the detective's point of view, does he have to be in every scene? My view is no. I am a big fan of just doing what you need to do to get the story down the way that it needs to be told and the way that it will be entertaining for your reader to read. So I am a big fan of having like 40 of your scenes be from your detective's point of view, but the 5 scenes that you really needed to do from somebody else's point of view, you just went ahead and put them in. And I probably wouldn't give another character the role of narrator. Like if my book was in first person point of view and my character was calling herself I would not have alternate characters do that. I would kind of, put them at a sort of a secondary position. They don't quite get that level of intimacy with the reader. They don't get to call themselves I. They get a third person narrator. But I would do that. And that's just my style. And, it's a little bit, It's maybe not conventional, but I think ultimately the payoffs are worth it. I think getting that intimacy with the one character is great, but also getting those scenes in that they can't be a part of is great. And why not just do them both? Just my own feeling. All right, I'm going to click over to my comments. I feel like I had one or two more questions in here that I missed. Okay. Matt asks, what if no suspect has anything to gain from murdering the victim other than hatred? Okay, so that is what I would call a power murder. So if you hate somebody, there's generally a reason. They have wronged you. They have made you feel powerless. And now, by murdering them, you can gain power over them. You no longer have to feel powerless. You are going to, show them who's boss. So that is, yeah, I think hatred can be the motive, but the hatred always has a history. It has some wrong that was committed, or at least some wrong that was perceived on the part of your villain. Nazib asks, how do you tackle theme in mysteries? I guess I'm going to say that the best way to do this is through your sleuth's chronic issue and acute issue. So, forgive me if you've heard me explain this before, but the chronic issue is just what's going kind of consistently wrong in your sleuth's life. Are they alone? Are they damaged by a trauma? What's going consistently wrong? And then the acute issue is generally the case, and it's going to give them the opportunity to finally face up to that chronic issue and conquer it. But then also theme can just be something that kind of evolves naturally. So currently I'm working on a novella in which my sleuth, Kitty, she has a young cousin, an 8-year-old cousin named Coco, for whom she is the guardian. So in this novella, there's a case to solve, but the theme is really about Kitty realizing she's been trying throughout the course of this novella to kind of step up and replace Coco's missing parents. And at the end of it, she's going to realize that ultimately she won't, because people don't get replaced in people's hearts. They are irreplaceable. And so this is the thing she will realize. And it's also a theme that plays into several other characters' storylines, where characters have been separated from their families and continued to mourn that separation, because ultimately, no matter how good your life may be, you can't replace the people to whom you feel you should be connected. So I don't know. Theme is it's a strange kind of timey-wimey goopy mess, where sometimes it really comes in the design in that chronic issue, and then sometimes it just evolves as you're writing it. But I think mysteries often provide great opportunities for talking about theme, because they deal with such important subjects. They deal with justice, they deal with mercy, they deal with what is right and what is wrong. And so we have great opportunities to talk about deeply meaningful themes. Angela says, when should you avoid turning your story into a mystery? I'm having issues of whether to keep my story as a historical mystery or simply historical fiction. Oh man, that is a really tough question, Angela. So yeah, I think basically this comes down to a marketing question. Is this book something that you imagine if you imagine me walking into a bookstore and I'm really looking for a mystery, I'm interested in finding my next mystery to read. Do you imagine your book is something that would appeal to me? If so, I might slant it more towards mystery and shelve it on mystery. On the other hand, if you imagine me walking into the bookstore and what I'm looking for is just a deep, juicy historical read, then you might slant it more towards literary fiction and try to get it shelved as well. You would get it shelved as in literary and as a piece of historical fiction. So I think, yeah, the question you want to ask yourself is, which readers will my book most appeal to? And then go all in on trying to deliver on the expectations of that group of readers. And let's see. So many questions. All right. All right, so Nazib asks, when can we expect Perfect Crimes book release? Okay, so this is talking about my Substack. I'll go ahead and put the link for that up. My Substack, which is called The Perfect Crime, which is it is my mystery writing book. All these things that I'm talking about here, you will soon be able to read in black and white. Actually, you can read them in black and white right now if you go to this link right there, and you can read every third chapter for free, or if you want to subscribe for $5 a month, then you get every chapter. And I kind of looked at my outline for this over the last month here while I've been in Texas, and I still have about 35 chapters to write. So at my current pace, that's a little more than a year from now that it would be finished, but I would kind of like to speed that up a little bit. So, the answer is, I don't know, but 9 months to 15 months is when I'm expecting to release the actual printed version of the book. And I'm really excited about it, but you can be reading it as I'm writing it if you want to subscribe to the Substack. And as long as I am talking about projects I've got in the works, let's go ahead and talk for just a second about Simple Mystery. So Simple Mystery is my actual class where it's an 8-week accelerator program. It's meant to take you from the first just germ of an idea to an entire scene by scene outline for your book with all the clues plotted out, all the false suspects, the motive, obviously, all the sort of events that your sleuth is going to go through to acquire those clues. And yeah, ultimately just a scene by scene outline where you have every scene in your book listed and you know what clues are going to drop and what's going to happen in them. And then it also helps you kind of take all those clues and events and wrap them up in that solid story structure we're talking about when we're talking about chronic and acute issues, when we're talking about theme. So I am going to be running that starting next Monday, which is, I believe, the 17th. 1 week from today is going to be the first day of the next round of Simple Mystery. So this link right here on the page, you can check that out and learn more about the course. But also, if you want to learn more about the course, you can join me for a free workshop that I'm giving tomorrow at 5 p.m. EST. So this is a workshop to introduce Simple Mystery, to tell more about it, to answer questions for it. But it's more than that. It's really kind of Simple Mystery in a nutshell. I take you through what is the entire process that you'll go through in the course. It's really, I've put my heart and soul into this workshop and I love giving it because I feel like people get a lot out of it and they just get to see the entire process kind of at a good level of detail. And I just love giving the workshop. It is totally free. It's on Zoom. So you'll get to chat with me and actually ask me a question, with your own voice instead of just typing. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's also just a lot of fun to connect with you guys and see your faces. And I love it. So Anyway, that is tomorrow at 5 p.m. EST. And it's totally free. And if you go to this link, you can sign up for the workshop. And yeah, please do, because I would love to see any and all of you guys there. And we'll just talk a lot about mysteries, and it'll be great. All right, I'm going to go back to my pre-submitted questions. All right. All right. Matt says, I'm really beginning to get into my Egyptian mysteries. However, since one of them is looking bigger in terms of scope and story, I'm wondering if including it in a collection of Egypt-themed stories, or if 3 novel-sized mysteries would result in a collection that's too big. What is your opinion? I mean, my feeling is that no series is really too large. If people are attached to your series, and Egypt is a fantastic hook, if people are into your series, then by all means, just keep writing it as long as you want to be writing it. And it can be, especially in this world of self-publishing that so many of us are a part of, it can be a little bit difficult to see, well, how long do I really want this book to be? And would it be better to break it up? And that's a question I would try to answer for myself in the planning process. I'd try to look at the story you've got, look at story structure, look at its story structure and decide, what portion of this story is going to tell a satisfying story where the character gets to be pushed to the limit and change and reach a satisfying ending. And then you might be able to break your large story up into a couple of sections that way. All right. And Fiona says, my question this week is about my murder weapon. I have thought of a new murder weapon, which fits my hook more, which is her hook is baking, and is more interesting as an object than my original weapon. I'm going down the route of a fake weapon being planted to hide the real weapon, but I need a reason for the other characters to suspect my sleuth, as this is what makes her commit to the investigation. Do you have any advice to help me figure out this reason? Okay, so her sleuth is going to become a sleuth specifically to clear her own name because people suspect her. So she wants a believable reason to make that happen. Well, I mean, the thing that hits me right off the top of the bat is if you're going to have a fake murder weapon, which later is revealed to not actually be the murder weapon. You think the murder weapon is this rolling pin, but it's actually, the knife or whatever. It would probably be the other way around. Probably you think it's the knife, but it's actually... Okay, this doesn't make any sense, but you think it's the knife, it's actually the rolling pin. I'm aware those deliver different kinds of blows. One way to make this work is simply have the sleuth's fingerprints be on the knife, or the knife was recently in the sleuth's possession, or the knife belongs to the sleuth. But often the way that we connect a character up to the crime is we have an item strongly linked to the character that is also strongly linked to the crime. So this knife in the middle, this is our linked strongly to the character and linked strongly to the crime. And then ultimately, if the knife is not the murder weapon, well, then that link is broken, and your sleuth is going to be able to find the other murder weapon that is going to be the rolling pin that is tied to the crime and will ultimately probably be tied to the actual villain, perhaps because of fingerprints, perhaps because of DNA, perhaps because of ownership, or any number of things. So that's one possibility for why your sleuth might be suspected. It also may be that she had the best opportunity. If the villain was killed in one of the sleuth's intimate locations, such as her home or in her car, that is another reason she might be suspected. It might be that other people have convincing alibis and your sleuth is the only one without one, or it might be that your sleuth simply has a great motive. Perhaps she had a strong conflict with the villain, which is solved by the villain being, she had a strong conflict with the victim. The victim was going to ruin her business, or the victim was going to do any number of things that she didn't like. And with the victim out of the way, that conflict is gone. Your sleuth is now sitting pretty. That's already a strong motive. And then if they had a verbal conflict, if they were actually exchanging words or doing things to aggravate one another in the time immediately before the murder, that is also another reason that your sleuth might be strongly suspected. All right, and this question, is this also from Fiona? I think it might be. Yeah, so another thing I'm struggling with is the mental step between planning and writing. I've hit a wall, and I'm now struggling to take my plan from outline form to a fully written draft. Do you have any tips to help me get in the flow? So first, I just want to sympathize, because I love the planning process. The planning process is all fun ideas and possibilities, and then the writing it's the hardest part for me. But I think that there are a couple of things that you can do to kind of get yourself there. First, you could take your planning just one step farther, and you could come up with a plan for your scene. I think I have a video about 6 scene planning questions that I used to kind of decide what's going to happen in the scene. And you don't have to do this for every scene in your novel to start off. You might just simply come up with, what is that first scene going to look like? How can I amp up the conflict in the scene? How can I introduce my character in a way that's exciting and that people like? And just try to get a solid plan for that first scene and then write it. Another possibility you could do is, you could consider sort of doing, I don't really have a name for this, but let's call it a phrase outline for the scene, where I would write my way through it, and when I'm stuck, I just sort of summarize what would happen at that point. Perhaps I write the character's introduction, and then I just type to myself, goes outside and sees the clouds darkening before a storm. And then I write the next thing that I really know. And then when I'm a little stuck, I might do some summary and stuff. And it's not my favorite way to write my way through a scene, because I do sometimes find it difficult to go back and create that connective tissue. But sometimes if you're really stuck, it can kind of help you get through that wall and feel like you are making progress. Good luck. And I'm right there with you a lot of the time. So let's see. I'm going to click back over to comments. And by the way, if I miss anybody's questions, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to scoop them all up, and I appreciate you guys putting in the question, because that helps a lot. All right, so Ansel asks, how can we structure a mystery plot for a screenplay? I would say this is almost the same as a novel. Except that you're going to get less interiority. While movies do voices and faces and visuals really well, the inside of the head is kind of, we novelists own that. So you're going to have less of that. And then another opportunity you have in movies is just to make things visually interesting in a way that I think we can do as novelists, but not quite as much. A movie I can think of that really did this well is Silence of the Lambs, where we have Hannibal Lecter's introduction is incredibly visually interesting. We go down this dark, cavernous hallway to meet him in his crazy glass-walled prison cell. And, everything about this is visually interesting, and it draws you in. And then the damning clue from Silence of the Lambs is this particular distinctive moth that that the villain places in the throats of the victims, and which ultimately the sleuth finds in his home. So that is a really fun thing you can do with screenplays, is try to come up with visually interesting clues, like the moth from Silence of the Lambs or the cryptex from the Da Vinci Code, and kind of take advantage of that visual medium. But ultimately, I think the structure of hiding the clues and finding the clues and creating the suspect subplots is going to be largely the same. And really, if you want to study mystery, I encourage you to do it by watching TV shows, which are screenplays, more so than by reading books, just because you can digest a whole lot more plots quickly by watching than by reading. All right. I am starting to run out of time here, and I know I have some awesome pre-submitted questions that okay. All right, so these are two I'm going to kind of take as a pair. What if my sleuth can't prove, sorry, I want to read the actual question. I'm worried that a lot of my clues are circumstantial. For instance, a lot of the clues don't seem to make sense until you put a bunch of them together, but I feel like the villain can say, you can't prove that with 100% certainty. This is due to some clues concerning disguises. My last big clue is that the sleuth's son finds a car report for the villain's car to prove that he was responsible for a past crime connected to the current crime. Would this be enough to prove the villain's guilt, or do I need to trick my villain into a trap or confess to get the villain to reveal some information? Yeah, so I think that would probably be enough, but it's a little bit maybe unexciting. And I would consider for your book some sort of sleuth's trap. I would, I have a video all about different ways to construct the sleuth's trap, but I would consider trapping the villain into giving up some revealing knowledge. I would consider making the villain attack the sleuth because they think they're about to be caught. I would consider trying to come up with a kind of dramatic ending that would enable your sleuth to really triumph over him in a great moment. I do think the clue is good and definitely can be what your sleuth uses to accuse him. It's just you might want to consider a little bit of a trap to kind of reel him in and give you that satisfying ending. And then this was another question. What about a villain who's too powerful to be convicted? So this is a villain who's very wealthy and Jeremy says, I was wondering if you had any suggestions on how to dispatch my villain, considering that him being arrested is not really an option due to his influence. I'm considering having my sleuth kill him, but I was wondering if you might have a creative alternative or, barring that, a more interesting way to dispatch him. Okay, so what I will say about this character is that even the very wealthy who have too much influence and too much power and too much money to ever be convicted still may have things that they cannot bear to lose. They still may have the love of a spouse or the respect of a child or the respect of a community group that they just can't bear to lose. So your sleuth exposing him might be enough to make him act, to make him decide to kill the sleuth. So what I'm talking about here is a style of ending I call an adventure ending, where the sleuth, maybe they know who's guilty or maybe they don't, but they're just getting close. And then the villain, scared, takes action to try to eliminate the sleuth and thus winds up exposing themselves, thus winds up unmasking themselves during this confrontation. And during this situation, it could be that the villain winds up dead if that's what you need to make your book work. Okay, this was a question I absolutely wanted to answer. Let's see. Katrina asks, where is the line on swearing in cozy mysteries? Could I get away with infrequent, mild, coarse language from my characters? I just can't see some of my characters not swearing at all. It would be unrealistic and out of character for them. Should I just accept this not really cozy and list it under a different genre? So I have such strong feelings about this question. And it's not because I don't know the simple answer to it, which is that the simple answer to where's the line on swearing in cozies is almost completely to one side. Like perhaps mild, very mild coarse language might be okay, but almost anything beyond that is going to be off-putting to some of the readers in the cozy audience. So that's sort of like the practical, simple answer. But I hate giving advice on where the lines are in writing because ultimately, I think we all want to write the books in our heart. We want you have your characters in your mind. They are the people they are, and you want to write their story as it should be told. And I straight up hate giving advice that would take you away from that, but I also don't want to act like we don't understand that there are such things as publishing categories and reader expectations that go with those categories, and that those do have an impact on your career. So I guess I'll say that the line is almost entirely to one side, but sometimes it's nice to skirt the line a little bit. Sometimes for the book that you need to write, sometimes that's what you have to do. And obviously, you're going to have an easier time skirting the line later in your career. For example, Charlaine Harris has some books which are shelved as cozies. They have kind of a cozy hook. They have a very cozy cover. I forget what they're the Harper Connolly mysteries, perhaps. Charlaine Harris, the Harper somebody mysteries, I think Connolly. And those have some tremendous violence in them. They are extremely not cozy, but Charlaine Harris can get away with this because she has the Southern Vampire mysteries, and she has a career and an audience that gets her a little bit more leeway with where the lines are, because she's way, way over the line in terms of cozy violence. So, yeah, that's my answer. The line is here. You think about whether you really want to be on the line or a little over the line. But it's a tough question to answer because ultimately these categories do have impact on sales, but we are writers and we're not here just to make money. We're also here to make the stories in our heads exist. So I hope that was helpful. It's a little bit, just write the story that's in your heart, which is sometimes frustrating advice. Sometimes you just want an answer. But it's a complicated topic. All right. Reem says, please, can you give some advice for writing mystery short stories like those of Miss Marple or Hercule Poirot? Okay. So the thing with mystery short stories is that mysteries by their nature tend to be a little bit sprawling. We're winding in and out of different subplots. We're investigating false suspects, and each of those suspects, they take some time. They take some pages. So the thing to do with a mystery short story is to figure out, first of all, you can do a whodunit, a mystery in which there are no false suspects. We kind of know from the get-go who the villain is, but the mystery will involve how they managed to pull it off while supposedly having a perfect alibi, or how they managed to pull it off. And the examples you're going to want to look at there are Monk. Almost all of Monk is whodunits, and those are kind of efficient because we don't have to use words on false suspects. Another thing that you can do is you can summarize. So a lot of these Hercule Poirot stories, they'll be summarized a bit. Perhaps there's a clue we need to pick up that this woman was uncomfortable at dinner. In a normal mystery, we might show that dinner in scene. We might see the comment she made that indicated that she was uncomfortable. But in a short story, we might just have another character summarize it for Poirot. We might have him read about the mystery in a newspaper. We might have the police detective come with a lot of the clues assembled, and he just tells them to Poirot, and then Poirot is going to go find the last one or two. So that is how to do a mystery short story, is to figure out what you can cut. You might be able to cut all false suspects, but even if you don't, you might be able to deal with them quite quickly by summarizing and just kind of cutting to the chase of those last couple of clues. All right. All right, this might have to be the last question. We're coming up on the end of the hour here. Shoot, I don't have the name with this. I feel like anyway. I heard a literary agent say, if you are submitting them a mystery or thriller, someone better be dead on the first page. Do you think that's good advice? If the detective is solving a cold case, does that count? Okay, so this again comes back to exactly what I was talking about a minute ago, which is that someone should be dead on the first page is publishing advice, but it is not necessarily conducive to every story being told the way it ought to be told or the way you want to tell it. So I think someone being dead on the first page is a bit of a high bar. I think, if every writer was doing that, we'd just, it would begin to become incredibly formulaic, right? It would not be thrilling for a character to be dead on the first page if it happens on every single mystery you pick up. But the advice I have often heard, if you're pitching to a traditional house, is have someone dead within the first chapter or within the first 3 chapters. And that, just as one of our earlier questioners kind of wants to fight against where the line is on language, I kind of want to fight against where the line is on when the crime in a mystery should occur. I just feel like there are lots of appropriate places for it to occur. It can occur at the beginning. It can occur kind of after a little bit of a buildup. We gather all of our characters at a conference or a house party or wherever, and a lot of tensions mount. And then ultimately, as a result of those tensions, someone dies, perhaps at the 1/4 point or perhaps at the midpoint. I feel like those are perfectly good mystery structures. And I want to fight against this belief that we should dispense with those structures because everyone has to get to the drama right away. And so I would also say that, you mentioned if it's a cold case, does it count? I think if there is a mysterious element, if there's a character in danger but not dead, if there's a cold case but not someone newly dead, if there's someone behaving in a creepy way towards one of the sleuth's relatives, that counts. I think anything that sort of introduces the crime or a dangerous element into the sleuth's world can count as that drama on the first page. And I guess maybe that's where I'd land, is that you want drama fairly early, but forcing it to be the murder to me feels too formulaic. And you guys know I like planning. You guys know I like structure, but I don't like everything to be samey. So I just don't always feel that that it's great advice to make sure to get those murders in quick. Okay, so I know that I have not been able to answer everybody's question, but I am out of time. So I just want to say thank you for spending this time with me. And let me once again just pop up the link for that free workshop I'm doing tomorrow, 5 p.m. EST. And I hope to see some of you there, and it'll be a really great time. So happy writing, everybody.